Blood is thicker than water. That is the lie they fed you. You are taught that family is your ultimate safe haven, the only people who will unconditionally protect your secrets, your flaws, and your dreams. It is a beautiful delusion. Machiavelli understood a far more terrifying reality. Your family is the most dangerous intelligence agency in your life. Because they share your blood, they feel entitled to your destruction. They do not view your boundaries as lines of respect. They view them as acts of treason. There are 7 specific things you must never reveal to the people who raised you. Share the wrong detail, and you do not just lose their respect. You hand them the exact blade they will use to dissect your life. The second thing on this list will entirely explain why you feel so exhausted around them. Let them think they know you, but never let them see the blueprint. The first revelation, the architecture of your escape. We begin with the most dangerous piece of information you possess. Do not tell them your ultimate ambition. Do not reveal the true extent of your financial ascent. And above all, never disclose your strategy for total independence. You assume your family wants you to win. They do, but only up to a point. Psychologists refer to the family unit as a homeostatic system, a biological cartel. It thrives on equilibrium. It assigns roles: the golden child, the scapegoat, the caregiver, the failure. When you start making moves that violently disrupt the role you were assigned, you threaten the survival of the system. If you announce that you are building massive wealth, or that you are planning to relocate your entire existence across the globe to sever your dependencies, you expect them to applaud. They will not. They will subconsciously perceive your freedom as their abandonment. They will attempt to sabotage you, not with malice, but with feigned concern. Is that investment safe? You are changing. Are you sure you aren't being greedy? We just don't want to see you fail. Do you hear the poison? They cloak their panic in the language of protection. They want to clip your wings and call it a warm blanket. Look at history. Look at Cosimo de' Medici, the architect of the most powerful dynasty in Renaissance Europe. Cosimo possessed staggering, incomprehensible wealth. He practically owned the papacy and the state of Florence. But how did he present himself to his own extended family and the public? He rode a mule. He wore plain robes. He lived in a house that was elegant but entirely unostentatious. Machiavelli studied this carefully. Cosimo knew that flaunting his true capacity would breed envy, even among his own blood. Envy is the most intimate of sins. It does not exist between strangers. It festers between equals, between brothers, between cousins. When you reveal your grand strategy, you invite their envy. You invite their uninvited opinions. You invite them to calculate what your success means for their status. Stop seeking their blessing. The powerful do not ask for permission to conquer. They execute the conquest, and they let the results fall where they may. Hide your money. Conceal your next career move. If you are planning an exit, look them in the eye, smile at the dinner table, and quietly pack your bags in the dark. By the time they realize you have outgrown the cage, you must already be flying entirely out of their reach. Are you starting to see the invisible strings attached to you? Because the next piece of information you are giving away is the exact reason those strings are choking you. The second revelation: the map of your unhealed wounds. This is the rule most people break, and it is the one that destroys them. Never confess your deepest psychological vulnerabilities, your childhood traumas, or the core resentments you hold against them. Modern therapy culture has sold you a catastrophic narrative. It tells you that if you sit down with your parents or siblings, look them in the eyes, and explain exactly how they damaged you, they will suddenly experience a profound awakening. They will weep. They will apologize. You will heal together. Erase this fantasy from your mind. When you hand your family the map of your psychological wounds, you are not handing them a tool for healing. You're handing them ammunition. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince regarding fortresses: a ruler should never build fortresses against his own people, for they will simply become prisons. When you expose your deepest vulnerabilities to your family, you think you are building a bridge. You are actually showing them exactly where your walls are weakest. Let us examine the mechanics of family enmeshment. When an argument inevitably erupts, and it will, human beings default to their most primal weapons. If you have previously confessed that your greatest fear is abandonment or that you struggle with feeling inadequate, watch what happens when your mother or sibling gets angry. They will not debate the issue at hand, they will target the wound. This is why everyone leaves you. You've always been too sensitive, just like you said. They will weaponize your confession, and they will do it with the lethal precision that only blood relatives possess. A stranger can insult you, and you can brush it off. A family member knows exactly how to slide the knife between your ribs because you drew an X on the exact spot. You must adopt a stance of absolute emotional sovereignty. If you have trauma, heal it with a professional. Heal it in the gym. Heal it in your private journals. Do not take your broken pieces to the people who broke them and ask them to fix it. They do not have the tools. When you interact with your family, present a surface of impenetrable calm. If they ask about your internal struggles, offer them a sanitized, highly controlled version of the truth. Give them the summary, never the raw data. I had a tough week, but I managed it. That is all they get. You strip them of their power when you strip them of your pain. A person who cannot be emotionally provoked cannot be controlled. You become an enigma, and families are utterly terrified of the child they can no longer easily decode. Do you feel the cold logic settling in? Good. Because if you think exposing your own flaws is dangerous, wait until you realize what happens when you expose someone else's. The third revelation: the sins of your chosen king or queen. The third thing you must never utter to your family concerns the inner workings of your romantic relationship. Never vent about your partner's flaws. Never tell your parents about the arguments you have with your spouse. Never disclose the financial struggles, the intimate betrayals, or the momentary lapses of judgment your partner commits. Why? Because of the psychological concept of triangulation. When you fight with your partner, emotions run high. You are angry, you want an ally, you call your mother or your brother, and you unleash a torrent of complaints. You list every terrible thing your partner has done. You paint yourself as the victim and your partner as the tyrant. 2 days later, the anger fades. You and your partner communicate. You forgive them. You share a meal, and the bond is restored. You have moved on. Your family never will. You have an emotional mechanism to forgive your partner because you love them. Your family does not possess that mechanism. To your family, your partner is an outsider, a foreign entity who has infiltrated the bloodline. Once you plant the seed of distaste in your family's mind, it grows into a toxic, unkillable weed. Years later, they will still view your partner through the lens of that single argument. They will harbor quiet resentment. They will make passive-aggressive comments at holiday gatherings. Machiavelli was ruthless about the division of alliances. He understood that a leader must never allow two separate factions of their life to cross-pollinate negatively. If you bring your family into your marriage, you have invited a foreign army into your private castle. You destroy the sanctity of your own union. Furthermore, you look incredibly weak. By running to your family to solve your romantic disputes, you signal that you are incapable of ruling your own household. You regress to the state of a child, asking for a parent's intervention. In the laws of behavioral framing, formulated by intelligence experts like Joe Navarro, human beings read authority through autonomy. If you handle your relationship issues entirely behind closed doors, projecting nothing but unified strength to the outside world, your family is forced to respect the boundary. If they ask how your relationship is going, the answer is always a variation of, "We are doing exceptionally well, thank you." If your partner is flawed, deal with it. If your partner is toxic, leave them. But under no circumstances do you farm out your relationship management to your blood relatives. You are simply handing them the chisel they will use to slowly chip away at your marriage. You must build a psychological firewall. On one side is your blood. On the other side is the empire you are building with your chosen partner. The two must never wage war, and you must never play the double agent. How often have you violated this boundary? How many times have you sought comfort only to realize you purchased it at the cost of your partner's reputation? The fourth revelation: your shifting philosophies and heresies. As you evolve, you will outgrow the belief systems you were raised in. Perhaps you were raised in a strict religious household and you have quietly become an atheist. Perhaps your family worships the concept of a safe, corporate 9-to-5 job, and you have embraced the chaotic, ruthless path of the entrepreneur. Perhaps they hold deeply entrenched political dogmas, and you have found truth in the exact opposite. Do not announce your heresy. Never tell your family that you think their entire worldview is fundamentally flawed. This is not about being a coward. This is about strategic energy preservation. Robert Greene, in the 33 Strategies of War, discusses the concept of choosing your battles. Why would you exhaust your finite mental energy engaging in a war of attrition at the dinner table? You cannot use logic to dismantle a belief system that your family used emotion and decades of conditioning to build. When you announce that you have abandoned their ideology, they do not hear an intellectual disagreement. They hear a profound personal rejection. They hear, "I am better than you, and the way you lived your entire life was a lie." The ego cannot sustain that kind of assault. They will attack you. They will attempt to re-indoctrinate you. They will drag you into endless, exhausting circular arguments that drain your spirit and leave you entirely depleted. Look at the historical treatment of heretics. The Inquisition did not debate theology. They burned people at the stake for threatening the established order. Galileo was right about the earth revolving around the sun, but screaming it at the authorities only got him house arrest. You are a strategist. You are not a martyr. If your beliefs have shifted, live them. Execute your new reality. But when you are around them, apply Law 3 of the 48 Laws of Power. Conceal your intentions. Blend in. Be bland. Smile politely when they preach their outdated dogmas. Nod slowly. Say, "That is an interesting perspective," and then go back to building your empire exactly the way you want to. You owe them respect as human beings, but you do not owe them your intellectual submission, nor do you owe them a tedious explanation of your awakening. Let them think you are exactly who you always were. The illusion of conformity is a cheap price to pay for absolute internal freedom. They get the comfort of their traditions. You get the undisturbed silence to conquer the modern world. Are you beginning to see the pattern? Every piece of information you withhold from them is a brick you use to build your own impenetrable fortress. You are still here. Good. The fragile minds have already clicked away, terrified of the reflection in the mirror. They would rather drown in the warm, suffocating waters of family enmeshment than stand on the cold, solid ground of reality. But you are a strategist. You are beginning to understand that the people who share your DNA are not immune to human nature. In fact, proximity makes them the most potent practitioners of it. We have established the perimeter. You hide your exit strategy, you conceal your psychological map, and you quarantine your romantic empire. Now, we enter the most deeply ingrained taboos. The revelations that, if spoken, will turn your own bloodline into a parasitic organism. The fifth revelation: your hidden treasury and contingencies. Never reveal the exact metrics of your financial sovereignty. Do not disclose your emergency funds. Do not explain your hidden investments. Do not tell them how much you truly have saved for a crisis. We are conditioned to view family as a collective safety net. The tribe takes care of its own. This is a beautiful sentiment for a hunter-gatherer society. In the modern world, it is an absolute financial death sentence. When you reveal surplus, you create a target. Machiavelli wrote, "Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony." He understood that money triggers the most primitive reptilian parts of the human brain. It overrides logic. It overrides loyalty. If your family knows you possess a massive financial buffer, their psychological relationship to risk fundamentally alters. They become careless. Why should your brother endure the humiliation of a toxic job when he knows you have the capital to float his expenses for a year? Why should your parents curtail their spending when they subconsciously view your bank account as their ultimate retirement plan? They will not ask you to fund their luxuries outright. Human manipulation is far more elegant than that. They will present you with crises, a medical emergency that isn't quite an emergency, a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity that is actually a scam, a sudden, unexplainable debt. Dr. Henry Cloud, in his clinical work on boundaries, distinguishes between a boulder and a knapsack. A boulder is a genuine crisis where a person is crushed and requires a community to lift it off them. A knapsack is a daily responsibility that every adult must carry themselves. When your family knows you have money, they will routinely hand you their knapsacks and stage act as if they are pinned under a boulder. And if you refuse, if you say no, you become the villain, the greedy, heartless child who turned their back on their own blood over pieces of paper. They will weaponize your guilt. They will remind you of the diapers they changed and the sacrifices they made, turning parental duty into a retroactive, high-interest loan. Look at the historical blueprint of the Medici Bank. The most brilliant financial maneuvers were always conducted through intermediaries. The true depth of their vaults was known only to a select few. To the masses, and even to extended family, they projected a state of calculated modesty. You must engineer a state of controlled struggle. When financial topics arise at the dinner table, nod sympathetically. Complain mildly about inflation. Mention the heavy tax burdens. Project an image of someone who is doing fine, but definitely does not have liquid capital to spare. Create a financial ghost ship. Assets they cannot see, investments they do not understand. A private treasury that exists entirely off the ledger of family awareness. You are not being greedy. You are preserving the relationship. By removing the temptation of your money, you force them to love you for your presence, not your utility. You force them to stand on their own 2 feet. True financial power does not flex. It hides. The 6th revelation. The graveyard of your regrets. There is a terrifying urge within the human psyche to be completely, totally known. We carry the heavy, rotting corpses of our past mistakes, our moral compromises, our legal gray areas, the people we have ruthlessly betrayed to get where we are. Sometimes, the weight gets too heavy. You look at your mother, your father, or your sibling, and a sudden, desperate urge to confess washes over you. You want absolution. You want them to hear the worst thing you have ever done and say, "I still love you." Bury that urge. Bury it deep and never dig it up. Your family is not a priest in a confessional booth. They are a jury that never adjourns. When you confess a dark, calculated transgression to your family, you permanently alter the lens through which they view you. You think you are showing them your humanity. You are actually showing them a monster they did not know lived in their house. Let us examine the court of King Philip the Fair of France. When he decided to annihilate the Knights Templar, he did not just attack their fortresses, he targeted their reputation. He extracted confessions of unspeakable heresies. Once those confessions were on the record, the Templars were finished. It did not matter if the confessions were coerced or entirely out of context. The public mind and the royal court could only see them as deviants. Your family operates on a similar psychological mechanism. They have a fixed mental avatar of who you are. Usually, it is a slightly updated version of who you were at 15 years old. If you suddenly inject a piece of dark, brutal reality into that avatar, if you admit you destroyed a rival's career on purpose, or that you engaged in an affair years ago, or that you navigated a highly unethical business deal and won, that avatar shatters. They will not forgive you. They will catalog you. The human brain is an evolutionary threat detection machine. It catalogs predators. When you confess a ruthless act, your family subconsciously recategorizes you. If he could do that to a stranger, what could he do to me? Every future interaction will be tainted by that confession. When you disagree with them, they will not see a simple argument. They will see the manipulator you confessed to being. When you achieve a new level of success, they will quietly wonder who you stepped on to get it. They will use your past sins as a trump card in future moral debates. You will lose the high ground permanently. Machiavelli stated that a prince must be willing to act against faith, against charity, against humanity, and against religion to maintain the state. But he also emphatically stated that the prince must always appear entirely virtuous to the masses. Your family represents the masses of your personal life. Keep your graveyard locked. If you need to dissect your past transgressions, do it with a highly paid professional who is legally bound to secrecy and completely detached from your social ecosystem. Let your family believe you are flawed but fundamentally safe. Let them keep the illusion. The truth is far too heavy for them to carry, and they will eventually drop it right on your head. The seventh revelation, the cartel's blueprint, your awareness of the dynamics. This is the final law, and it requires the absolute highest level of psychological discipline. As you study power, human behavior, and behavioral framing, your eyes will open. You will start to see the invisible grid of manipulation operating within your own family. You will spot your mother's covert narcissism. You will recognize your father's emotionally absent enabling. You will see clearly that your sibling is the designated golden child, permanently exempt from consequences. You will identify the exact moments they use guilt to extract compliance. You will see the entire toxic, deeply entrenched system. The temptation to call it out will be overwhelming. You will want to sit them down, point at the blueprint, and say, "I see what you are doing. I see the manipulation. I know exactly how this sick system operates." Do not say a word. Never reveal your awareness of the matrix. In clinical psychology, there is a concept known as the identified patient. When a family system is deeply dysfunctional, the system unconsciously selects one member to bear the symptom of the dysfunction. The family points to that person and says, "They are the problem. If they were fixed, we would be fine." If you attempt to psychoanalyze your family to their faces, if you attempt to dismantle the cartel from the inside by exposing its methods, you will immediately become the identified patient. The system will violently reject your diagnosis. They will turn on you with a ferocity you cannot anticipate. They will gaslight you. They will tell you that you are reading too much into things. They will say you have become arrogant, cold, and crazy. They will triangulate against you, forming a united front to protect the established order of their dysfunction. You cannot heal a sick organism by standing inside it and screaming that it is sick. Machiavelli observed the chaotic, treacherous courts of the Italian city-states. The courtiers who survived were not the ones who stood in the center of the piazza and denounced the corruption of the Borgias or the Medici. Those men were hanged or poisoned. The survivors were the ones who saw the corruption perfectly clearly, nodded politely, played the necessary superficial games, and quietly maneuvered themselves into positions of untouchable leverage. You must become the observant courtier in your own family. When your mother attempts a guilt trip, you see it. Your pulse does not rise. You do not argue. You simply apply a boundary with a calm smile. "I understand you are disappointed I cannot attend, but my schedule is locked. We will catch up next month." You do not explain that you are setting a boundary. You simply execute it. When your sibling attempts to drag you into a drama triangle, you do not lecture them on triangulation. You simply refuse to participate. You step out of the way and let them swing at empty air. When you reveal that you know the game, you ruin your tactical advantage. You warn them. You force them to upgrade their manipulation tactics to bypass your newly stated awareness. Let them think their old tricks are just momentarily failing. Let them think you are just a bit busy or slightly distracted. Play dumb. The most powerful position you can hold in a hostile negotiation is that of the underestimated participant. Observe the system. Exploit the system if necessary to maintain your peace. But never, ever offer the system a mirror. They do not want to see their reflection. They want you to stay in your assigned role. Smile, nod, and slowly, invisibly, walk backward toward the exit. Pause, breathe, We have dismantled the romanticized ideal of the family. It is uncomfortable. It feels almost criminal to look at the people who raised you through such a cold, calculated lens. You feel a sense of guilt right now. A voice in your head is whispering that this is too ruthless, that this is paranoia. It is not paranoia. It is self-preservation. Here is the profound paradox of the Machiavellian approach to family. This level of emotional detachment is the only way you can actually continue to love them. Think about the alternative. The alternative is the path of total exposure. You give them your money, your secrets, your relationship flaws, your shifting beliefs, and your criticisms of their behavior. What happens? You drown in resentment. Every holiday becomes a battlefield. Every phone call spikes your cortisol. You begin to genuinely despise the sound of their voices. You end up cutting them out of your life entirely, carrying a massive burden of bitterness to your grave. By building this invisible architecture of boundaries, by strictly regulating what information crosses the perimeter, you remove the friction. You protect your peace so fiercely that when you do interact with them, you can actually be pleasant. You can afford to be generous with your time because they cannot extract your soul. You can smile at their quirks because those quirks no longer control your destiny. You accept them as flawed, limited human beings, rather than expecting them to be mythical, unconditional gods of protection. You stop asking them for what they cannot give. And in that acceptance, you find a cold, unshakable tranquility. You transition from the child desperately seeking validation to the sovereign architect of your own reality. They live in their world. You rule yours. The borders are closed, but diplomacy is polite. That is true power. You are no longer reacting to your bloodline. You are simply navigating it. But as you look at these 7 revelations, a final dangerous question must rise in your mind. If you have to build walls this thick just to survive the people who are supposed to love you the most, what does that say about the foundation of everything you have ever been taught? Are you simply surviving the matrix they built for you? Or are you finally ready to tear up the floorboards and see what is really underneath? If this shattered your illusions, understand this is merely the surface. There are mechanisms of dark psychology I absolutely cannot discuss publicly without facing algorithmic suppression. The most dangerous truths exist exclusively behind the join button. If you seek the uncensored reality, click join. Step into the architect level. Most won't. That is exactly the point.